Hello, everybody online and here in person. Thanks for attending. Appreciate it. Um, you are attending the 2021 Chicago Max Safety Requirements Seminar, and it's being presented by Rick Hayes and Clark Pellett of the Chicago Yacht Club. They are attending and presenting remotely. We are recording this as a Zoom webinar. We'll be posting it on our website later this week after we download it and clean it up a little bit. Actually, it'll be on our Crowley's YouTube channel. Um, we're gonna have a question and answer section at the end. So if you can hold your questions till then, we'll address them after they've had a chance to go through their presentation. Let me tell you a little bit about our two speakers. Rick is a member of the Chicago Yacht Club, and he sits on the Race to Mackinac Committee, as well as the Race to Mackinac Safety Subcommittee. He's a member of the Storm Trysail Club and director of on the board of the Island Goats Sailing Society. He's competed in 34 Macs and 5 Port Huron Macs. He's a seasoned navigator with extensive expedition experience. And Clark is a seasoned sailor and skipper of Skylark, a J105, which he actively campaigns on Lake Michigan and I think around the country as well. He's a member of the Chicago Yacht Club and sits on the Race to Mackinac Committee, as well as the Race to Mackinac Safety Subcommittee. Clark, how many Macs have you done? Just
38.
38 Macs. So this guy has quite a bit of experience, which he's going to share with you, and a really encyclopedic knowledge. Both of these guys do a Mac safety requirements. So I'm going to turn it over right now to them and mute myself and just enjoy it along with you.
Bill, thanks for those introductions and your support over the years to the Chicago Yacht Club and our race to Mackinac. We appreciate that very much. Rick and I are thrilled to be here this morning. We'd like to give a shout out to Fabian and Nick for helping getting this event put together, and an even bigger thank you to Grant Crowley and the Yacht Yard's amazing support for the boating community, as well as especially us sailboat racers. So as you heard, Rick and I have sailed this race a number of times, but it never gets old, and you're always learning something. We hope that everyone listening will be able to continue to sail this race safely. And I want to acknowledge that Rick and I are both old goats, which means we've managed to get to the island 25 times. Rick also sits on the board of directors of the Island Goat Sailing Society. So before we get started, I'd like to we want to make sure that that you recognize that what we cover today is not a comprehensive review of all of the more than 70 enumerated requirements under the CMSR. This is not meant to be a substitute for each of you, the competitors, carefully reading and complying with each of the CMSRs. So in addition, remember the CMSRs are the minimum standards required by the racing authority as a skipper or invited competitor or person in charge, the watch captain, or even just a member of the crew. You know, we urge that you contemplate ways of completing the race and making it safer for everyone, and sail to minimize unnecessary risks to the crew and to the boat. With that disclaimer and that being said, we can turn to the how do you get to the CMSRs through the website. It's when you go to this, what I do is I just Google CYC RTM, which is the Chicago Yacht Club's Race to Mackinac. That pulls up Google search pulls up the formal website, and the race documents you'll see at the top of that race. When you get to the website, it should look something like this, but at the top you'll see this black bar that has the various categories you want to click on on the competitor section, and underneath that, you will find the official notice board, and underneath that, then you see the CMSRs are published. There are you notice with this slide that there is an official version as well as an unofficial version, and the difference being that the official version is what's published in an Excel spreadsheet format. For those of you who don't have Excel, we've PDF'd that and put it into a PDF file so that it's easier to read for some of those. The CMSRs are divided into sections. So there's an overall section. There's one that deals with the hull and structure. The third section deals with safety equipment and gear. Crew skill sets are then prescribed in the fourth section. And the fifth section of these CMSRs list 22 specific requirements that that are specific to the Chicago MAC race. So most of these track the SERs, the U.S. sailing SERs directly, but the Chicago specific ones are all put together in Section 5. Remember that it is your responsibility to review and comply with each of the specific requirements. And also, of course, boats are subject to inspection to ensure that these requirements are met. So let's move to the first section, which is your overall responsibility. It's clear that I'm sure everyone knows, as the skipper, that you are in fact, the person in charge, and it is your obligation and sole and escapable obligation to maintain the safety of the vessel and of your crew. In addition, it's important that you maintain and make sure that the boat is seaworthy and that the safety gear is properly maintained and stowed. In addition to having this, you want to make sure that the crew knows how this equipment is utilized, and obviously the equipment itself has to be of the size, type, and capacity that's for its intended use on the boat. And of course, it has to be readily accessible. It doesn't do you any good to have the flares stowed up under in the sail locker with the storm jib. And I want to then move to, since our main focus is going to be on Section 3 here with respect to safety equipment, we're skipping over the boat and hull requirements in Section 2. But we thought it would be best to emphasize the safety equipment and other features in Section 3. So I'll let Rick begin to talk about personal flotation devices.
Yeah, thanks, Clark. And just to reinforce what Clark already said, here you can see that this is Section 3.1.1. We're not going over every one of the 73 items. That would, be pretty brutal for all of us. And we've just checked, selected the ones that we think are relevant and important to emphasize today for all of you. Safety equipment personal. This is every crew member must have a inflatable or must have a personal flotation device. Per the requirements, this life jacket or PFD must be worn at all times during the race. It is mandatory from sunset to sunrise, and then the person in charge may direct it to be removed in daylight hours if they choose. You can see we've paraphrased some of the specific requirements here, that it needs to have at least 32 or 33.7 pounds of buoyancy, et cetera. To go to the CMSRs and actually read all of the requirements. We didn't want to go over it word for word here. But as most of you, I'm going to guess, know, these are required for the race. I'm going to take this opportunity to shamelessly plug an event that we're doing at the Yacht Club, or virtually, and at the Yacht Club next Saturday, which is maintaining PFDs. And just as we've done in the past, in past years live, and then last year virtually, we will have representatives from Spinlock, Mustang, the manufacturer for the West Marine PFD, and a U.S. Sailing Safety at Sea representative for that event next Saturday. If you're interested, you can find information at the Chicago Yacht Club website. This next item is the tether. And again, this is a required piece of equipment. And I'll point out that something new this year is a minor item related to the tether. The tether's always been required, and it is required to be connected both to the boat, the jack line, and then to the harness that's, for most of us, incorporated into the PFD. In the past, the tether was required to have a quick release at the tether end that connects to the harness. What we have allowed now is the tether end that connects to the harness does not need to have a quick release if the harness itself has a quick release. And there is at least one PFD, which is some of the newer spin locks, that actually the quick release is on the PFD itself. And so we changed the wording, but the intent is the same, that there needs to be a quick release at the body for the tether. And then here we have the jack lines, and we've got a down view looking at the deck of a boat, and with the red lines, which may or may not be easy to see, you can see we've shown jack lines. The boat is required to be equipped with these, and the specific requirements as far as the strength of the material and everything is listed in the CMSRs. Sometimes it is a flat webbing, other times it can be a line. A flat webbing is a little less prone to have people roll their foot on it and lose their footing. I have heard in some safety at sea classes that when you use a flat webbing, that you might actually want to spin it a couple times, so that when you have your gloves on, you can go down and pick it up really easily. Some boats also put a third jack line on, which is not required, but down the center line of the boat. And the reason for that is that being able to clip into the jack line as you come up from below and before you actually get on deck, which is hard to do if you don't have that third one.
So Rick has talked about things that help keep your crew members on the boat and safe. The life jacket, the tether, and the jack lines. I also want to mention, by the way, that Phil will be the moderator of that life jacket clinic for us, as he has done in the past, and help impart all of his expert knowledge. So what I want to talk a little bit about now is how you reconnect a person who has gone overboard with the boat. And there's essentially, 2 or 3 very central pieces of equipment on your boat to ensure that once you get close to the individual, you have an opportunity to reestablish a connection and obviously reel them in. We all, or you all should know of the Life Sling. It's been around for a number of years. It has all of the critical instructions right there on the package. But if you haven't practiced with the Life Sling, and you haven't inspected it lately, please make sure you do that this spring. You'll find that in the CMSRs now a requirement that you in fact conduct practice exercises for reattaching and getting people back on board, which would include deploying the Life Sling. And as we all know, it works essentially like a ski tow rope that you circle the individual until it comes over their shoulder, and then you're able to reel them in. In addition to, one of the ways to reconnect is if you have a mom or a Dan buoy or other a man overboard pole and flag that has the required Life Sling and light and drogue attached as a unit. And this is an important device to deploy immediately if someone goes overboard. And the reason for that is that the deployment of this instantaneously helps you establish a point in the water that perhaps the crew member can get to the Dan buoy or the pylon, and will then elevate the ability for you to spot the individual, where to locate and to relocate the individual. But more importantly, that the deployment of the mom, if it occurs instantaneously, is much more efficient than the delay that's going to happen when you run downstairs and punch the man overboard button. There's maybe a 5 second, you have to push the button for 5 seconds in order for it to activate. So you might have a 5 to 10 second delay. A boat traveling at 10 knots is going to go 17 feet a second. So if you think about it, you're, even 10 seconds away, you're already somewhere around 50 to 60 yards away from the individual. And if you have ever tried to locate something in the water, even with the little waves, 50 to 60 feet starts to become an issue. Later this season, on May 26th and June 2nd, we're going to actually conduct live on the water drills with an individual, with a dummy in the water, and you'll be able to hone in on it with an AIS signal, and you'll be able to have your crew experience how far away from this device they are going to be able to establish a visual connection. So you'll have an opportunity to practice and to realize just how important it is to deploy this mom as soon as possible. The other piece of the other way to reconnect an individual to the vessel is through the throw rope. It's the minimum requirement is a 50-foot rope that's in a sock that you can then throw over the individual's shoulder, and they can grab onto that, and you can also then reduce and bring them in alongside. And remember that there's a lifting strap on most life jackets, so that it'll help to actually bring the individual up onto the boat safely. In most cases, the seas that you're going to be in when these incidences occur create enough of a chop that you do not want to bring the individual toward the stern, even though some of us have stern ladders, swim ladders at the back. It's much safer to bring them alongside. And this is something you obviously should practice so that the crew is efficient in understanding how to accomplish this task. And I think the next part of our presentation is on electronic communications, and that's Rick's area.
Okay, thanks, Clark. As you can see, this is 3.14. We're still in safety equipment, and As most of us know, a boat is required to carry a GPS receiver. And in the picture here, I've got, you know, Garmin units, either handheld or mounted on the boat. Sometimes some boats have their GPS signal get routed to a chart plotter. Other boats have laptops on them. But in any case, a GPS receiver with an antenna is a piece of equipment that's required for the race. And then 3.15 is not just owning a piece of a GPS antenna and receiver, but you know, you need to be able to record the position of a man overboard. Clark and I will be going through the man overboard drill or practice certificate here in a few minutes. But one of the mandatory first items to be done in a man overboard incident is a spotter or pointer is throwing over the mom or the Dan buoy, and then also immediately pressing a man overboard button, which can be on a VHF radio, can be on a GPS, handheld or otherwise. But you are required to have equipment that can record the position of the man overboard. 3.16.2, emergency communications. Every boat is required to carry an EPIRB, and for the MAC race, we allow a PLB to be used in place of the EPIRB. In the picture on the left is an EPIRB, and immediately next to that, if you can see my cursor, is what's commonly referred to as a PLB or personal locator beacon. Both of these work similarly, that when they're activated, their signals are sent to satellites, and those satellites are then monitored by emergency control personnel. Ultimately, an activated EPIRB or PLB signal will end up going to the Coast Guard. And neither one of these is what we refer to as a personal AIS DSC device, which is what a crew member would carry. And we're going to get into that later, but EPIRBs and PLBs send signals to satellites, where the crew device is a more localized signal that sends it to AIS and makes a DSC call, and we'll get into that a little later. Here, every boat is required to have an emergency tiller or rudder. And this is in the event that the rudder on the boat becomes disabled for whatever reason, that you need to be able to steer the boat. And pictured here at the top is probably what most of us, and I've been on boats over the years in my 34 Max, where, you know, you take a spinnaker pole and you have some clamps on board, and you get a table or a floorboard, and you put it all together and you stick it off the back of the boat, and you think that's going to work. I've never tried that. I would encourage all of us to actually go through this and try it to see if it works. But right below that, I have something pictured, which is called a gale rider drogue. And this gale rider drogue this happens to be sold by the Landfall Navigation. And I've been in a couple seminars recently related to safety and man overboard and situations. And this drogue, it's attached to a chain, and obviously it goes off the back of your boat, but then you attach to the one end of the chain 2 spinnaker lines. One would go to amidships on the starboard side, the other to amidships on the port side, and you can actually steer your boat that way. And it's a great solution for being able to steer your boat in the event you lose your rudder. So I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention.
So now we're into some of the Section 5 Chicago specific requirements. We're skipping through some of these because they're easily, you can read them, and I think they're clear enough to understand. We though do want to point out the personal safety knife that must be carried at all times, and it must be able to be opened with one hand. The reason for this, of course, is in most instances when you're under way in heavy weather, the old maxim of one hand for the boat and one hand for the task applies, so that you've got a way to hang on and yet still get the knife deployed and be able to cut some line or a sail, or even if you happen to be perhaps you've gotten yourself in a position where the tether is creating an issue for you, and you may need to cut yourself loose to free yourself. Obviously, if you have your life jacket on at all times, tying the knife to the jacket is a very easy way to accomplish both requirements. And then we are, I think, back to the personal locator beacon, which is also part of of your life jacket. But Rick, you can explain that a little better than me.
Okay, I think that recently we did a webinar at the Yacht Club hosted by the MAC committee on this particular device. And their different manufacturers have different names for it, but for the sake of this presentation, we're going to refer to it as a personal AIS DSC man overboard beacon or device. And this would be worn by every crew, and it can be packed into the PFD and attached to the self-inflation tube, and then tied around the bladder, so that when you go in the water and the bladder inflates, it automatically sets off the signals, and it will send out an AIS signal, which is able to be received by any boat within range, typically within 3 to 5 miles, that has an AIS device on their boat. And it also sends out a DSC call. And this would be a digital selective call made to the VHF radio of the boat that you fell off of. You do need to program the MMSI number of the VHF radio into the device. And there are instructions. What we're showing here is one manufacturer. This is an Ocean Signal. It's called an MOB1. It's the smallest device we know of that has both AIS and DSC. ACR makes one, but it's really not intended to be packed inside the PFD, as it's a little larger. You can see here on our slide that we do identify the double-handed division crew. Both crew are required to carry these. And right now, this is not a requirement, and we'll get into that a little later when we talk about future requirements. But if you do have one, you are required to program the boat's MMSI number into it. And just on a side note, I would encourage um, every boat to actually know how DSC works on their VHF and to test that. Make a call to another boat through your VHF radio. It's a great tool. We require every VHF radio to have DSC for the Mac race, but I know a lot of people that have never used it, so we encourage that. Clark, I don't know if do you want to start with this one? And I think we're right on time, actually.
So we're at the Chicago specific requirement of the Crew Overboard Recovery Drill Certificate. So as many of you know, this has become a requirement for check-in. It was required in 2019, and it will be required again for this year's race. The certificate is designed to aid you in practicing the various recovery methods, as well as practice utilizing a number of pieces of safety equipment on the boat. If you go in and look at the the checklist that's there, you'll see that there's a number of instances where you are to practice utilizing the life sling and the throw rope. And by practice, we mean that each crew member should actually handle that piece of equipment and deploy it in the manner in which it's intended to be deployed, and to observe and how they can improve their efficiency in utilizing the safety equipment. In addition, in some cases, you instruct on how some of these items are deployed. We don't, for example, the mom or the Dan buoy, obviously you don't want to physically deploy those, but things like the life sling you can deploy and then reel it back in and repack it yourself. This document is posted then on the official notice board. It should be, for this year's race, available for publication shortly. But what you see here is the 2019 certificate that was utilized.
Yeah, and Clark, if I can add to what you just said, what we're showing here on the screen is just a part of the form. The bottom part of the form is where the crew have to sign and date. We require that at least 2/3 of the crew practice this on the boat they will be on, so that the crew, you identify positions, you identify your spotter, you identify the person that's going to get to the man overboard button. You have different positions and you have secondary positions, because the man overboard might have been the primary spotter. And if they are, someone else needs to do that. It's a really important position. You don't want to lose sight of the person overboard. And I think that US Sailing and the Storm Trysail Club are working on some new ways to actually rescue somebody in the water without having the boat get close to them. And that should that'll come out sometime this year, probably not before the Mac race, but getting close to somebody is hard in certain conditions, and with heavy seas and strong winds, it's not easy to do. So we really want to emphasize the fact that this exercise, this practice, be taken seriously and be practiced. And I do know boats that will spend a 6 or 8 hour day going through this. Sometimes people practice this at night, because that brings practice the man overboard recovery at night, because there's a whole other set of circumstances involved. So we just wanted to spend a little time on this just to emphasize its importance. And again, this is a document that has to be handed in at check-in, signed by the crew. So you can't wait till the last minute. This should be a scheduled activity in every boat's program prior to the MAC race. Anything else, Clark, that you can think of?
I think those are the highlights. I mean, I know that I think in some of these procedures that are being developed, the recommendation of approaching an individual from the leeward side, so that it is sometimes a little easier. But again, you want to practice in conditions that are difficult, because that's probably when you're going to be executing these maneuvers. It doesn't work to just go out on a nice, flat, calm day and throw a hat in the water and pick it up with your boat hook and decide that you've completed the practice requirements that are listed here. So.
Yeah, and Clark, I mean, I have to admit here publicly that 20 years ago I was on boats, and that's how we did it. We actually on the way out to the start of the race, someone would take off their Mount Gay hat, throw it in the water, and we'd go back and pick it up with a boat hook and sign the form. And that's really not the way that it should be done. And
No.
so we're trying to encourage this to be done in a methodical manner and taken seriously.
So we could move to wrapping this up a little bit. Here's again the 5.18, which is the Chicago specifics, in addition to what's required earlier by the U.S. Sailing. The Chicago MAC Committee has these specific requirements added to the life jacket, which you need to make sure each jacket complies with that. Obviously, if you have individuals that are coming on your boat and bringing their own life jackets, it behooves you to take a little bit of time to make sure that they meet all of these specifications, and not just assume that that's something that the individual has complied with.
Right, and Clark, I'd like to emphasize the leg or crotch straps. That's something that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, weren't around, and they really help. That inflatable PFD is much more comfortable and much more useful when you're wearing these leg straps and crotch straps. Yeah, I think that we all need to get into the habit. When we put the PFD on, we wear the crotch straps as intended.
Yeah, you certainly learn how important those are when you do an in the water exercise without them, because that inflatable comes right up past your neck, and in some cases you can slip out of them without having the crotch straps there to cinch you into the jacket and to lift you up out of the water. And obviously the crotch straps also then lift your entire body up out of the water. So when you're in waves, you're not, you're at least a little bit more protected than if you were just floating on the surface. So not only should you wear your life jacket all the time, but you should have it, have those straps, crotch straps fastened and cinched down.
Well, and I think a lesson here is just know your equipment and own your equipment. If you're going on a boat and they give you a PFD, if someone gave me a PFD, I'd open it up. I'd look at it. I'd see which side is the inflation tube on, so I knew that. I'd make sure it had a whistle and a light, and that it had crotch straps and that it fit me. And I'd make sure it was all the straps were set so it fit well, and as a crew member, I want to be able to trust the PFD that I'm wearing. I want to make sure that that cartridge is good and et cetera. And so we all have that requirement, you know, and so here, this is Appendix A. And for anybody that goes on the website to look at the CMSRs, it is the Excel spreadsheet has tabs on the lower bar. And there's 4 or 5 tabs there. One of those tabs, I think it's the first one, says Appendix A. And Appendix A are recommendations. And it's a single page. And right now there are 6 recommendations. So these are not required for the race, but they're recommended. One of those recommendations is references the U.S. sailing safety equipment requirements 4.3.1, and this is related to safety at sea training. The CMSRs do require currently that 50% of the crew have to have safety at sea training that has been done within the previous 5 years. It needs to be current, and there is an expiration date on safety at sea training. Our recommendation, on the other hand, is that all members have this. And we also recommend that 30%, not less than 2 of the crew, have what's called Safety at Sea International Hands-On Training. And that's a specific type of comprehensive training that often takes 2 days, in addition to completing and passing the online course. And there are many races around the world where this is becoming more and more required. So we recommend this, and we anticipate in the future that we may be increasing our required percentages, but for right now, 50% of the crew is required, and then we recommend everybody have the training and 30% have the hands-on training. And as you can see in the photograph, I've got my hands-on training certificate just as an example of what you get when you do complete that. I did mine in 2018, so it will be good till 2023, and then I'll have to take it again.
So Rick, what's coming up in the future here?
Well, I think we've got, this is another recommendation that boats must carry an AIS transponder, and that you need equipment to visually display that. You have to have a dedicated antenna for the AIS. Many boats will use a splitter to use your VHF antenna, but you need a specific type of splitter. And in the recommendations, we recommend that you not disable your AIS while racing. This recommendation is anticipated to become a requirement for the 2022 MAC race. And we want to let people know that now. So the CMSR actually has this same wording in it. And so boats, in all likelihood, next year for the 2022 race will be required to have one of these devices on board. In addition to that, we recommend that every crew member wear a personal AIS device. We're again showing the MOB1, but that's just one manufacturer. I believe there are 2 other manufacturers, ACR and a third, that have both AIS and DSC capabilities. There are other devices that only have AIS, but we recommend to also have DSC. This device is a much more localized signal, as I mentioned earlier. So it sends out an AIS signal, which goes to boats within range, 3 to 5 miles, that have an AIS transponder and can receive signals. And then it also sends a DSC call to the VHF that has been, whose MMSI number was programmed into it. And again, this is also anticipated to become a requirement next year's race. And again, every crew member would need to have one of these.
And the reason, Rick, that we have the DSC and the AIS capability is so that the device falls back to the boat that you fell off of with a DSC signal to alert the boat in case nobody was paying any attention that you now have just dropped off and need to come. They need to come back and find you. And the AIS signal is a more broad or broadcast to all boats within line of sight, so that perhaps a boat that's nearby will see the man overboard signal symbol show up on their chart plotter and be able to come by and find an individual as well.
Right. And again, from what I've seen and what other people have promoted in safety at sea, that the best rescue for a man overboard is by the boat they fell off of. And the next best are other boats in the area. You don't want to wait for your EPIRB or PLB signal to be sent to a satellite and get to the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard typically will then contact the person, the emergency contact, to make sure that the signal for this boat is actually in a race before they start sending out assets, boats and helicopters. So this device is more localized, and when it sends a DSC call to a VHF radio, the most recently purchased radios with DSC will actually go into alarm and then give you the LAN of the person in the water along with range and bearing. So,
and again,
great information to have.
And again, we intend to conduct 2 live on the water drills this spring, Wednesday, May 26th and Wednesday, June 2nd. There'll be additional information from the Yacht Club and from the beer can committees on specifics, but you will be able to test how your equipment displays receipt of an AIS MOB signal from a device that like this that we have pictured here. So look for that information as well. In the meantime, if there are any questions, we'd be happy to entertain them. And make sure you sail safe, and good luck with fair winds, right? Bill, do you have any questions in the chat box or in the audience there? You're on mute.
There's nothing in the chat box. Anybody have any questions on the AIS or any of the new rules or any of the existing rules, how to access things? Okay, guys, we've got a group here, a nice group, and they seem to have gotten all their answers.
Again, thank you very much for having us. If there are questions, they can be submitted to Regatta Manager at cycracemackinac.com. Obviously, the website has a lot of information. We look forward to seeing you on the line here in July, and before that, seeing you at some of these on the water drills, you practice your man overboard recovery requirements.
We will be posting this webinar after we clean it up a little bit next week on our YouTube channel, Crowley's Yacht Yard's YouTube channel. So if you want to go back and reference anything that they covered today, you'll be able to do that later on this week. Thank you, everybody, for attending. I'm going to sign off here. Have a great day.
Okay.